Hello everybody, today we're going to take a look at two AJ Ferguson Zodiac streetlight battens here. Okay, and we're going to take a look at the difference. Okay, so both of these are made by AJ Ferguson, which was a company that made streetlights for Australia back in the probably back in the 60s all the way up till probably the 90s. Okay, AJ Ferguson is sadly no longer in business. They sadly went out of business. I think when mercury vapors came out. I don't really know if they had mercury vapor lamps, but these are just a couple of their streetlight battens that they used to make for Australia for when we had switched over to fluorescent streetlights back in the 60s to replace incandescent. Okay, now both of these fittings, as you can tell, look brand new. That's because they've been restored, but they are used. They're both second hand. Okay, but I have restored both of these to their former glory, so that's why they look brand new. Okay, so this one here I believe is the first generation, and this one here I believe is the next generation. Okay, or second generation. Okay, the reason I ask is because of the way you mount them and the shape of the chassis. Okay, on both of these, the diffusers are both the same and the plate is the same. The difference is the chassis, okay, and of course the way you mount them. Okay, so I'll show you that. So if this one here, if you look at this one, it has these rounded edges on the chassis here. Okay, and also this one here you can only mount at the top, so there's a top mounting arm that screws in here and then you can mount it. Okay, so that's this one. Okay, on this other one, on this one here is the next generation. This one here is square edges, but this one here you can mount either from the turn it this way. This one you can mount either from the side or from the top. Okay, so this one here is top or side mounting. Okay, as where this one here is top mounting only. Okay, so that's just the difference there. Now this you notice has two of these on here. That's because this one here you can put a photocell on. Okay, because there's a little dome that sits on top here for a photocell. Okay, but this one, since it doesn't have a photocell, the hole is covered up. Now there is actually another version of this where it only has just this cover in the middle. It doesn't have this other one. Okay, I do have one of them. Okay, which is still being restored because I've run out of lamp holders. Okay, all right. Now so I'll flip these back around. Now speaking of parts, both of these battens use button type lamp holders, which are HPM 382. Okay, I don't have any more. Unfortunately, I've used them all up, but I've got more coming. The starter receptacles these use are HPM 390, okay, which is a receptacle that's commonly found in a lot of modern day battens and stuff like that. Okay, both of these use a magnetic ballast, of course. Each tube has its own ballast. Okay, well that's after the restoration. Originally, both of these had one big black ballast that operated both tubes. I had to replace them because they were no good. I actually replaced all the wiring and all the guts in both of these. Okay, so that's why. So to make it look better and better, it's better to do that. Okay. Now both of these you can run. Both of these the chambering was originally F20T12 fluorescent. Okay. Yeah, I do have individual videos on both of these, and I do show you them turning on with T12, T8, and LED tubes. Okay, and this, as you can see, I've got LED tubes in them right now. Okay, but I can use fluorescent in them as well because they are compatible with that. Okay, it's just that whenever for light shows and displays and or anything like that, I tend to use LEDs. Okay, it's just it's not because I'm going green. It's just that I don't like my dad having to pay high energy bills, so that's why I use LED tubes. All right. Okay, but I can use 18 watt T8 fluorescent in these as well. Okay, the tubes, these are 9 watt LED tubes, of course, in both of these. SAL, neutral white. Now the diffusers on these are both held shut by these two latching devices on either end of the batten. Okay, so to undo it, you just unscrew these. Okay, one end is actually retained. Okay, so one end is retained. Okay, one end is not. Okay, on this one here, this end is retained. So you basically just loosen this up and loosen that bit, then the diffuser will drop down, and then you can get access to the plate. Now both of these, I should mention, do have concealed starters. Okay, so what that means is that the plate isn't bored through. The starters actually sit up inside the chassis here, and they sit up inside there. So to change them, you actually got to drop the plate down, okay, and then you can get to the starters. Okay, they're not bored through. Okay, so they're concealed. Okay, is what I call it. All right, so now you might notice on both of these the diffusers are actually not excavated. Now the yellow light in here might make it look like they're excavated, but they're not. Okay, they're still see-through. Okay, so because of that, I don't think these. I don't really know if these diffusers are even original to the battens. Okay, but they just came with them. Okay, they're just the diffusers that came with them. All right. Okay, so there. All right. So I guess we'll take these, open these, take one of these apart, and I'll show you what's inside. I guess. So I guess we'll take this one here apart, and I'll show you what's inside this one. This one's a little bit easier to disassemble. Okay. Even though that's easy to disassemble too. Now the guts in both of these are the exact same thing. Okay. There's really no difference between them. Okay. Okay, the only difference really is just the shape of this chassis really on the fittings, okay, that's really the only difference. I should mention this one, the plate actually sits in a bit deeper into the chassis compared to this one. Okay, so we just got to loosen that end a bit. Okay, so you undo these two little latching devices here, if you can see that. They flick out like that. Okay, now we can open it up. Okay, so the diffuser opens up just like that. Okay, now we have access to the tubes. Okay, now both of these have a rubber seal around the chassis here. What that does is it keeps water and insects out of the fitting. Okay, I used to use silicone for these, but I don't anymore. I ceased doing that. Alright, now this one here, apparently the plate's a bit loose. It wants to sometimes sink into the body. Okay, but that's not a big issue because we're going to be taking it out. Alright, so we'll take this plate out. Okay, now inside here we have these two screws, if you can see. These two screws here are for the side spigot entry. Okay, this one here you don't have that. Alright, I'll just unplug this plate because with these you can unplug the plate, okay, which is actually good, so that helps it make it easier to service things. Okay, so here's our plate. Now this is the exact same thing for both of these battens. Okay, we have our two ballasts, okay, which I had to replace. These are the two brand new ballasts that I put on this. We have a terminal block here and our two starter receptacles. So as you can see, the starters are concealed. So now the battens open up, I now have access to the starters and I can change them. Okay, so this batten here has concealed starters, okay, they both do. Okay, most of the street lights back then did have it. Now as where the Daylight Adelaide, the full length Daylight Adelaide, it was actually bored through. Okay, but not these ones. Okay, I'm still trying to get a Daylight Adelaide. I'll keep you informed when I do get one. Okay, so that's our plate. We'll just set that there. Okay, now we'll take a look in the chassis here. Now in this chassis, if you take a look, you can see we have, this is the hole for where the photo cell would stick out, and this is the hole for the top mounting. Okay, so this one here you can top mount, okay, or side mount. This one here it's top mount only. We have another terminal block here where the mains lead comes in and screws into here, and that allows it to apply power to the connection here. Okay, and we have our two spigot screws. Okay, so once the fitting's on the arm, you tighten that and it locks it onto the arm. Okay, and these are flat blade screws as well. So okay, so you need a flat blade to loosen or tighten them. Okay. Alright, so we'll put this back together now. Alright. Before I do, if you take a look here, you can see how nice and shiny these screws look. Okay, they're nice and shiny because they're all brand new screws. Okay. Okay, so we plug this back in. Okay, now with this you can only plug it in one way. Okay, I should mention that because if you, okay, when they made those fittings, they did that deliberately to be sure that you don't plug it in. Be sure you don't plug it in wrong, because if you plug it in wrong, it will malfunction every time. Okay, I think those spigot screws are a bit loose. Let me just fix those up a little bit. Okay, you've got to have these spigot screws in, otherwise the plate won't sit in the body properly. Okay, another thing I should have mentioned with this batten here, the plate actually was a bit bowed. Okay, I don't know how that happened, but the plate on this one was bent. Okay, but I have since bent it back into shape. Okay, I don't know how it got bent, but it's just the way it was when I got the batten. So, okay, and the plate is held in shut by these two latching devices here, and as you can see, it's going to sink into the body there. Okay, it's really annoying when it actually sinks into the body. It shouldn't really do that, but for some reason it does that. But that doesn't really matter because when this is mounted, it's going to be hanging this way up. Okay, so technically the plate relies on gravity to prevent it from sinking into the chassis. Okay, so when you have it mounted, it's not going to sink into the chassis like that because it will be held in place with gravity. So the gravity will be pushing the plate down, so it's not going to. So that way it doesn't sink into the chassis. Alright, so there you go. Alright, now as you can see, the lamp holders are here. HPM 382 is what they are. Okay, they're not the original ones. The original ones were made by Peerlite. Okay, this tube's a bit chipped. Not a problem, that doesn't really matter. Tube still works fine. Okay, now these are type A LED tubes as well. Okay. Alright, so now we'll put this back together and then close the diffuser up. And you can see inside there where the plate is, where the screws are. You can actually see inside there. Just looking inside. Okay. Yeah, because apparently this plate sinks into the body. It's quite annoying, but that doesn't really matter. Okay, so we close this diffuser up. As you can see, when you close it, it makes contact with that black seal there, and that black seal makes the fitting watertight. Okay. Okay. Now these were probably some of the very early weatherproof battens that we had in Australia. Okay. Weatherproof battens have changed a lot over the years. Okay. Now with a lot of these, you do tend to see the diffusers excavated, okay, which is yellow from sunlight exposure, okay, but not these ones, okay, because these ones are obviously probably are not that old. They probably haven't been out for very long, or they could have just been new old stock, okay, because there is new old stock where you might find these still brand new in their box, okay, if you're lucky. Okay, now I should have mentioned that these two covers have these two rubber gaskets around them to keep water out. I actually had to replace those gaskets because the original ones were no good. Okay. Alright, so both of these just run on your standard 240 volt household power supply as well. Okay, so that's pretty convenient. Okay. Now I should have mentioned with this one here, you can't actually put a photocell on this one because it doesn't have that. Okay, because actually back in the 60s they didn't have photocells. Okay, the way the street lights turned on and off automatically was they were actually on timer switches to my knowledge. Okay, so there were timer switches operating these. Okay, the photocells didn't come around till the 80s. Okay, so when the 80s you started seeing photocells in street light things. The old daylight Adelaides didn't have photocells. Okay, and some of the old OptiSpecs didn't have photocells either. Okay, and some of the OptiSpans didn't either. Okay, so but I do know that the Roadstars that came later in the 2000s did. Okay, in the Urbans. Okay, and the photocell these would be the D2 type. All right, so that's just basically just a little comparison between the two AJ Ferguson Zodiac battens. So you got the top mount only, which is this one here. And then you got your top and side mount, which is this one here. Okay, so the threading is in here, so it's basically you can use any type of pipe piece. You can actually make your own arm if you want, okay, and you can actually suspend it from the top, or you just mount it at the side. Okay, and also the side mounting one has this interesting shape on this end, okay, to accommodate that. As with this one here, you don't, it's just round, it's the same on both edges, on both ends. Okay, and this particular design here was actually, these are actually quite rare nowadays. You'll still find them in very old areas, abandoned areas or anything like that, so probably in some public areas, very old ones, some old private buildings. You might even see it, you'll probably find them in some historic heritage towns around Australia, but yeah. Okay, they are very collectible nowadays. Okay, that's why I've got a couple of them. Okay, I've been wanting a few Zodiacs, and now I've got them. Okay, I'm gonna take good care of these, and I'm gonna have fun with them. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed, and that'll be it.